All right.
We are
Good.
recording.
Okay. So at 1:32, we'll start the meeting of the Safety and Technology Subcommittee. I'm Jessica. I introduced myself to everyone, but Mike recently asked me to be chair of the subcommittee. And Lisa brought up during the last school committee meeting some concerns about RF technology, and especially with the discussion about putting the cell phone towers in. We thought we assigned it to the subcommittee. And find the agenda here. So Lisa did put that in the drives, and there were some links in the agenda as well. But I didn't. Oh, sorry. Let's roll call. I apologize. I think, right? I apologize. Jessica's here. Lisa?
Here.
Carol, thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Paul, thanks for joining. And Nicole, thank you so much for taking minutes. I appreciate that. So on to the second agenda item is, like I was mentioning, the RF safe to data and around the cell phone tower project that the other subcommittee is working on. And Paul, you've put quite a bit of work into as well. So I know there was some discussion in the subcommittee meeting. I haven't been able to watch that one yet. But you mentioned that the timeline was not imminent, or.
And Carol, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but from the way the discussion went, partially we want to see what's going to happen with Verizon doing the work out on Route 70. So how much is that going to improve things? And do we need to take further steps if that doesn't improve things? And then we're also waiting to get some information about, like just the school safety and how that part of the phone, the communication that's not phone, that's like public what's the word I'm looking for, frequencies that they're using to do the police and fire radios. So I don't think there was going to be like that immediate, let's put this on the school committee agenda for action right away, because until we know some of those things, even considering where funding might come from and all that, seems like overkill until we know some of those other results.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the fiber cable project as well.
Yeah, that won't impact cell service in the building. It could potentially impact communications in the building, so to speak, because we could potentially like tie phone systems together so people would have maybe a more direct connection to Carol in central office. But it wouldn't necessarily improve it. Well, it wouldn't improve cell service in the building.
Yeah. Is the fiber cable project to help reduce Wi-Fi? Like, what's the purpose of that?
So predominantly to improve communication between the buildings. So like our network, like right now, we run multiple servers in every building. We run phone systems in every building. We have internet connections to every building. It wouldn't impact the Wi-Fi. It would again allow us to do some things internally on the network that we can't do right now, or that we go out to the cloud to do. So when folks share files between buildings, they're actually going out to the cloud and then back into the other building rather than direct to the building. Mm-hmm. Again, it hopefully be some cost savings, or there should be some cost savings in terms of what we pay for internet, because we won't have to necessarily have an internet connection at each building. Mm-hmm. Again, putting that hardware in place in each building, we should be able to see some cost savings. In terms of RF and the conversation we're kind of having, it really wouldn't have an impact.
Well, interestingly, that is one of the proposed solutions to dealing with a lot, to reducing the RF. They're saying like install more fiber optic cables, so you can hardwire laptops and, use less Wi-Fi and all of that. So I don't know, maybe that could be combined
Yeah.
somehow or.
So yeah, I mean, it would improve like network, and again, would have to again looking at some of the stuff that you sent. I mean, you'd have to say, you know, take a lot of the laptops and the Chromebooks and basically say we're no longer going to go wireless. We're going to hardwire them. Certainly, having the fiber connection between the buildings isn't going to hurt that. We would have to do some major restructuring internally if we were going to do that. Like we have drops for probably in a given room. There might be other than the labs, there might be like 4 or 5 hardwired connections. If you're starting to talk about being able to put 26, 27 kids plus, the teacher on there would have major overhaul to the network to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Have you, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I understand where all this is coming from, and I but at the same time, realistically, I think it would be a reach for us to start trying to plan that.
Well, at least I think it should be on our radar, so to speak, so that we can, as we do projects like the cellular one and this one, maybe we can wrap that in. I mean, did you guys look at any of the links that were in the drive? And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah,
I did
so
not.
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jessica.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was a lot of material. I can't say I looked through everything, but I did try to click on some of the links to dive in. And so like the New Hampshire report, the commission, the House of Representatives were on there, some from the Senate and Attorney General from New Hampshire. So I did dive into that. And there's a minority report on there too, which was the opposing opinion. But I thought it was all, they had a lot of different experts talking about a lot of different studies, and I clicked on a bunch of the other things and tried to read that as well. And so I have not, I've not dived into this particular topic previously. But it was a little concerning to see how worldwide different countries have reacted to it. So like India itself reduced their RF limit to 1/10 of the prior limit. And a lot of different countries in Europe, including in Europe, there are certain limits to they cannot be on schools, they cannot be in hospitals, they cannot be near preschools in terms of the towers. So, the fact that it is kind of a world, many different countries are looking at these effects, I think certainly gives the validity of the concern. So I think it is something that should be looked at, and certainly, because when the radio tower was first being put on onto Honjo, I had that concern, and the police chief was like, "Yeah, it's safe," but I think it's different. I think it's radio waves versus the cellular waves. Again, not my specialty at all, but I think if we're talking about putting in repeaters and the cell phone for more coverage, I think maybe we need to look at it a bit more. Maybe because I know safety ultimately is the other concern, is that people can't call out or call in, but maybe that could be, those cell phone things could be limited to the hallways or like the common area, like the cafeteria, rather than every single classroom, to try to reduce that. So I think it's something that we should keep in mind and maybe should be put on the agenda for future school committee meetings when that cell phone project is looked at.
CC Doucette, the founder of Massachusetts for Safe Technology, is very happy to come to our school committee meeting and talk to us about it. She is an expert. She's been educating the public and legislators for over 10 years now, and she's really well versed in all of it. And, she could give us a lot of ideas and a lot of information that would help us to move forward so that we make sure that we provide a very safe environment that is conducive to learning, actually, because a lot of these frequencies, they disrupt your blood-brain barrier. So things get into the pristine environment in your brain that shouldn't be there, like chemicals and other toxins and heavy metals and, microbes even can get into the brain and cause inflammation. So that's going to be bad for learning. It also impacts they're called the calcium channels, but they're like voltage gated calcium channels of the nervous system. And that impacts nerve impulses and therefore learning and mental health. And it also causes a lot of oxidative stress in our bodies. Like our whole system is susceptible to oxidative stress. And I don't know like how much everybody knows about that, but that oxidative stress is one of the root causes of all chronic disease. So everything, cancer, dementia, all of that stuff, even depression, mental health issues. And so, the experts are really sounding the alarm on this. And if it's, not going to be conducive, if we're going to like do that, like for convenience, like, which is great. And I understand that. And I was like, yeah, when I first heard about it, but then learning about this, I think it's like our sacred duty to provide the environment that is, safe and conducive to learning. And that's not going to leave the kids and the staff with long-term health issues. And it's like, I know it's kind of hard to say sometimes, like, well, what caused that person's cancer? Because there's so many things in our environment that are not healthy. But this is, if it's doing all of those things, it is causing issues. People are reporting that their fatigue is like unrelenting, that they feel brain fog, that they almost feel like they have like dementia coming on. They have like pain or headaches or migraines, and depression is a big thing too that arises from all of this. And there are some people who are very sensitive to this kind of radiation more so than others. And they're being seen as kind of like the canary in the coal mine, because they're showing the results faster than the rest of us, but the rest of us are feeling it too. I hear like everybody's like, I don't know, my brain's not working that well. I can't remember things anymore. And so I think it is impacting all of us, and it's just going to be, we all have our different thresholds, and apparently this is cumulative also, that the effect of it is cumulative. So I think it's something that we should definitely be looking into. And the cool thing is that it's like none of the people who talk about this are anti-technology. Everybody's pro-technology. They just want to do it in the safest way possible. And another thing to consider is that it's starting to be this EMF kind of sensitivity syndrome is starting to be considered a disability. And so it's like covered under the Americans for Disabilities Act. And so organizations and schools and, places are having to accommodate individuals with this. So, if we're not set up and if we're not already, kind of addressing it proactively, it might be expensive, inconvenient, and, might open us up to lawsuits. Like, who knows what's coming down the road, but it does seem to be getting worse and worse. Just from what I'm learning and looking at, it's kind of like, and I just want to say, I hate to bring it up because I don't want to be that alarmist person, you know what I mean? That's like standing in the way of, progress or anything like that. But just from what I've seen, there is a lot of cause for concern. And I just want to say one last quick thing about it. A lot of us rely on our government and, the agencies to say, yes, this is safe, don't worry about it. And the safety studies that the FCC is relying on was decades ago, and it was done for only an hour. They exposed rats and monkeys to radiation for 1 hour at increasing levels. So then when they found the point where the animals didn't like act properly, and then they kind of reduced it, and they, by a safety margin, they said, okay, this is safe for humans. But since that's been done, there's like over 10,000 studies that show harm. And, and some people will say, oh, but there's studies that show that it's not harmful. But apparently the vast majority of them do show harm. And the ones that don't, that show that it's safe are industry funded. And unfortunately, a lot of our government agencies are captured by the industry that they're supposed to be regulating. And I think that is the case right now with this. So, I just think, we should be proactive and invite the experts in that can help give us the other view, and I'm not an expert. I'm just like sharing what I learned. But I think we should bring people in before we do anything.
Yeah, and also it looked like Ashland Public Schools has done something, and also Maryland about hardwiring schools. So that certainly can be looked at because it's, within the US and even Massachusetts, see
Yeah.
what examples they've
Yeah.
done. So,
Yeah. And there's even laws on the books that are being considered now for the fourth time, but usually it takes a few times. So maybe these things will be passing also, so we'll be ahead of the curve, I hope.
well, thank you for bringing that data forward. Yeah, I think it's in the drive. So I know tomorrow meeting is a short meeting, but maybe that can be kind of put there to let people simmer on that data and look into it as well, and have your speaker come in the future too at one of the regular meetings. That'd be good.
Yeah. Do we want to recommend as a subcommittee that we do invite CC Doucette to speak? I don't know how that works. Like if we have to vote on that or something, or if we can just invite her if Mike says it's okay, or.
I am not familiar with voting on subcommittees because I don't think we can, because we're not a 4 out of 6.
Okay.
It's a quorum. But certainly, can you? I don't know what her credentials are. Was that in one of the documents? I didn't see her name. I'm sorry.
Well, she's on the on that website, MA #4 Safe Technology. She's on there, all of her credentials and everything, all about her is on there. And then there's another organization that I think is in the drive called Tech Safe Schools. So they will have really specific information for us. And they might even have people that will come and speak to us and, give us advice on how to implement things.
Yeah, I think as long as we acquire her resume, and then we could maybe put that, what her credentials are, and suggest that we have her come talk.
Okay.
It's on their website. Yeah. But that first document was interesting with all the radio links too. So thank you, Nicole, for putting that in there, and thanks, Lisa, for sending it.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess my only comment, Lisa, is as you say, like you don't know how people are going to react to this, and so what happens if we have her come in and speak, and then we have 10 parents who say, I don't want my kid in a room that has a wireless access point. And we're not, I know part of this is we're saying, let's start getting prepared for that. But
Right.
like at this point, my question or my comment would be like, what are we going to do? I mean, what,
Yeah.
as a district,
So it might just be.
Are we opening? Yeah. And again, I don't think it's a bad Pandora's box to open. And I don't necessarily, I don't disagree with that part at all. But it is a Pandora's box. And so, would we be prepared? Should we have a speaker come in who's going to, basically say we should shut everything off? What are we going to do? Like that would be like my, how are we going to handle that?
Right. That's a very good question.
So the Pittsburgh Mass Board of Health went into, it was one of the links in one of your documents, and so perhaps we can involve the Boylston and the Berlin Board of Health to maybe see if they would be open to that speaker first, and see if maybe through that through them.
I actually did talk to 19 Carter about hosting CC also, because this is, just for a community concern too. So I think, one way or another, whether we have her on the school committee meeting, that the word will be getting out. I've been trying to spread the word.
Yeah, well, and I don't think, and again, I think that's a good thing, and I think it almost might be, I think there's an assumption that if the school committee brings her in, then the school committee is going to do something about it, which again, may in fact happen. But if it's a more neutral third party like 19 Carter or the Berlin or Boylston boards of health, maybe that's I mean, again, thinking from our standpoint, from the school side, it's a little more neutral, and so just my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, really, because we're doing the five, the town has gotten the 5G towers to come along Main Street, which is not too far from my house. So I think that is a town-wide concern too.
Yeah.
So it might be something to bring before the Board of Health to look at, and maybe have, invite them to that meeting in 19 Carter if that is going to come to fruition. Sorry, Carol.
No, that's okay. I was just, and I do want to look at these documents more in depth. I just haven't had a chance to get to that yet. But I was also thinking there was a conversation around having sort of parent forum nights, to address some of these bigger issues, and providing maybe some kind of like different representation there, different perspectives. And so we're looking at it from a balanced approach to all of this. So I think that's kind of what Paul might be speaking to a little bit. But that may be a consideration too, whether it's at 19 Carter, you're going to draw the Berlin people, but you're not going to necessarily engage the Boylston parents. So rather than repeating things or taking up school committee time, that may be an opportunity to address this. We may also find, I think Paul was talking about this earlier, that when the 5G piece comes up, and then some of the other pieces we're putting in place, that we may not need them. That's sort of the wait see that he's been talking about. I don't know if it'll still be great in the schools. That's what we're not sure about, but it may help to address some of the issues that we have, the radio communication and so on. So it could be something you want to talk about getting started now, before we move forward too quick, to get too far ahead, or it might be something you want to hold on until it gets closer to the possibility that we might need to address this. So that's really your.
So do we have parent forums scheduled, or would that just be something that we would have to schedule and put out there? Or
Yeah, it would be. It's been something that we've floated around. I think that was part of our subcommittee meeting, maybe with the budget subcommittee. I think just different opportunities. I think we talked about it last time in the school committee. It was just referenced, and it might have been relative to what we're talking about here. I think that's what it was, but we certainly could do things like that as we're expanding in every direction around technology. So it could be a great conversation to have. Just educating. Bottom line is educating individuals to make an informed decision, including us.
Right. And in their own homes too. Like, this is something that people can apply in their own homes that will make them healthier. I have to tell you, I bought a radio frequency meter, and they recommend that like the top number should be under 10. And there's in my family room, it was under 10. I put on my cell phone and it like flew up to like 100,000, and then it was like kind of pulsating, from there, turned it off, went back down to 10. And then I'm sitting there, and the kitchen's kind of big, and all the way across the kitchen is the microwave, and my husband put on the microwave and it started setting off the meter all the way across. So there's just like a lot of things reaching us and impacting us. But if you are interested in borrowing my radio frequency meter, I'm very happy to lend it out if you want to play with it in your houses or anything like that. I mean, I got it for that reason, so people can see, what's happening.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yes and no.
I know. It's like, this is so inconvenient to even think about this, but I just think we have to.
Paul, in that vein, I mean, do you think the company that you got the quote from, do you think a representative from their company would be willing to come out, or I don't know?
I certainly think they would. I wouldn't say and again, they're experts in terms of creating the networks. I don't know, as I would say, they're experts in So they're experts in RF. Like, are they experts in the health concerns of RF? I don't know. Like, that's an unknown. Again, one of the things that, as I started looking through some of the stuff you sent, Lisa, I mean, it's one of the things in like education that we often run into. So like the same data set gets used in 300 to 400 studies. And so, you know, as I started digging through some of those studies that Mass Tech Safe and some of the others cited, a lot of those go back to 2 studies, one in Sweden and one in France. And it's like they were looking at different things. So the study itself may have been looking at different factors, different health factors, but a lot of it was using that same data. And so again, that always scares me too, like that being able to separate out, you know, it's like there's a reason why these 50 reports kind of draw a lot of the same conclusions, because they use the same data. I can't tell you, I spent days. I spent like 2 hours, you know, looking at some of the stuff. And so,
Great.
but a lot of it again went back to a 2011 study, you know, in France, and I think it was a 2009 study in Sweden. And a lot of it was more about this, and how close you're putting that to your head, and how, you know, how often you're using it. But I'm not against finding out more, and creating a safe environment, and knowing that we're not, you know, just like the COVID shots, people are going to have questions 20 years from now. What did we do, and what were the health impacts? The same thing with all the RF and whatever. We should be studying, and we should be taking that thoughtfulness into what we do and the decisions we make as a district.
Well, I appreciate you guys considering it and poking through all of that, because it's a lot. It's overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah, no, thanks, Paul, for taking that time.
Yeah, and again, either Carol or I could reach out to RSF and see, you know, again, they've offered to come and speak to, you know, like the equipment, and the equipment is used, you know, and again, it would be a very general, in terms of safety, they would basically be saying what the difference, probably they would be comparing it to, you know, the RF that you're getting from a phone versus the RF coming from the pieces of equipment that they're talking about. They are not going to be in the classrooms for the most part. They would be in the hallways. You're still getting exposed to, you know, to some of the RF, whether whether you're in or not. And the same thing on the Wi-Fi. The kids are getting exposed to Wi-Fi, you know, whether we do this project or not. That's already happening. So, yeah. But
maybe, you know, if we do, you know, all find that we agree, like this is all a concern, you know, maybe someday there could be a Wi-Fi project, you know, where we do more hardwiring, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't, you know, it would be one of those things, you know, maybe we can reduce it by 50%, and, you know, and that's a step, you know, like maybe, you know, we can get it back to where, you know, we're somewhere closer to that, you know, and it's not a perfect world, but, you know, maybe it's a step in the right direction. That's certainly, I don't think we'll ever again get back to zero, but if we reduce it, maybe we're helping a lot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think anything we do, any steps we take to reduce is good.
Yeah. One of the reasons I clicked into New Hampshire Commission report is I figured they were going to have, you know, experts from both sides. And so they did have the minority report in there that did, you know, basically say no. So, you know, it's definitely a valid point, Paul, to to look at the data, to dig down into it. But so, I think if you're successful, bring them to 19 Carter. If you could send that out to us, and then also maybe we can let the Boylston Selectmen know about that and the Board of Health as well, to just get them thinking about that in that direction and see if they can look into it more too.
Okay, that's what I'll start with then, and it makes it, less time from the school committee also if it's not at a school committee meeting. But hopefully everybody could come and listen, to her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, please forward us when that meeting happens.
Okay. All right, I'll start with that and see how that goes. I'll let you know.
Thank you. And I know everyone's very busy, so I'll just touch upon the next agenda item if that's okay with everyone. So the BES playground, I spent a lot of time out there this summer with summer softball and also in the spring because the fields are out back. And there's been two items that have been broken for quite a while. There's a spinny structure and then also the tire swing. So I'd hope those would have been repaired before school started. That doesn't seem to happen. And like, why am I talking about it on this committee? Is because recess is really important for student success. And so we want to allow our kids to have the best opportunities to get out all their energy in the time given. So I didn't know, I know PTO and some members of the community were trying to get things to happen. But I didn't know kind of what the status was. And Carol, I don't know if you knew or talked to Dan or.
I don't, Jessica. This is the first it's been brought to my attention that there are broken pieces out on the playground. So I'll follow up with our facilities manager and find out if they've had a chance to go out there and fix them. It doesn't sound like they have, based on
not as of the day or the Sunday before school.
Okay. Let me follow up with him and see if they've had a chance to go out and the custodians and find out more information.
Yeah, because it looked like the spinny one. That's it was wobbling, so I didn't know if it could be repaired or if it had to be replaced.
Okay, let me ask about that. I don't know. I'll just put a little note to myself to find out.
Okay, and in terms of like repairing that, would that be under our budget? Is that something that we would try to reach out to the PTO? Because I know I talked briefly with the PTO and that would not be within their ability in the fall.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it could be down the road. It could fall under our facilities maintenance line item, so it could be that. In the past, I know that their PTOs have put money into rebuilding playgrounds, or special interest groups have raised funds. I don't know if that's the long range plan here is to do that, or I'm not sure about this kind of the condition, I guess, of the playground out there, that would warrant that, or the desire of the community to rebuild a new playground. But in the meantime, we can certainly find out about these two items and see what we can do. It could be a quick fix. It could be something that we go to school committee and say, this is the cost of that. We'll have to look into it. So let me find out more information on that.
Thank you. I figured with the principals changing, that's probably what happened. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to get hurt out there, so we'll look into that.
And I know it's a favorite, the spinny one, as horrific it is to watch. They love it. So
okay, yeah, let me find out more about that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Not our favorite one, but their favorite.
Yeah, I can't watch it. So
yeah, I hear you.
So that brings us to future agenda items. If anyone doesn't want to talk anymore about that was just my one concern about the playground. I don't know if anyone has anything comes to mind. No.
I think one of the questions I had for the group, because how do I say, this subcommittee was formed last year. It didn't have many meetings to it. We had a couple, Paul, feel free to speak up if I'm wrong. We probably had 2, maybe 3. So I think one of the things I would say for us is to define for all of us what this subcommittee's responsibilities are. Like, what are the things? Because when I think of, the technology is obviously, I mean, we can go in so many different directions with technology. And also then the student success, I'm not sure if that refers to like all aspects. We have a wellness committee that's getting started up again. That would seem to be under student success, social emotional curriculum, test results, accountability data. Is that something? Is it all of those things? I'm not sure myself right now, what kinds of things you'd want to bring forward. So maybe just defining that a little bit better will help us to decide what's on the agendas going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, student success is a pretty broad umbrella. So I don't want to duplicate any of the subcommittee's work. I know the other one of the committees is safety. So, I think the technology and the safety, that's why the safety subcommittee is working on the cell phone stuff. But arguably, it could be under the technology subcommittee as well. So, I don't want to waste people's time and double dip on topics, certainly. But I think in terms of, like, I was thinking the Fuller Foundations had made that kind of offer to match funding to do that. So I don't know if that kind of has stopped in its tracks or if we just kind of left that dangling, and maybe we could pick that up to continue opportunities in the community. I know recess time and time on learning is something that I think, personally, I would like to be looked at. I mentioned it to Ace before he left, but changing of the guard. And so, originally there was 2 recess times, and then there was a 5-minute recess before the beginning of school, and it kind of let the kids just get out more. There's a lot of data supporting the more recess, the better. There's some Texas schools that have 3 recesses, and it shows the kids are able to concentrate more. And certainly with all the behavioral issues and ADHD increasing, I think that would be something that would be great if we could look at the data and see if the time on learning would allow us to reintroduce 2 recesses at the elementary level. Don't want to date myself, but there were 2 recesses back in my day. And I think that was really important for people to be able to sit down in elementary school. Paul's laughing because he's my teacher back in the day too. So, are any of the subcommittees looking at Ames Web specifically, or do any of them tackle that? Or
no, the only way we look at that is through the school committee meeting presentation. So, but there's also the district accountability measures that come through MCAS results. That would be a possibility. I wanted to get back to something you mentioned about the Fuller Foundation. So I reached out to Mark and Jan Fuller earlier in the summer about the funding. They wouldn't be able to give us any funding, the actual funding itself, until mid-year, like around January. But we did make a commitment to them tied into that funding that we would pursue ways to get more community members interested and involved in kind of philanthropic endeavors, right, on behalf of the schools. That's not something that we as a district can do as a public entity. Like, we can't reach out, but we need folks who would be willing to kind of spearhead that work, I think, in the community, and create maybe some type of committee that might be interested in doing that from both towns. So I don't know how to do that. I don't know. I could not chair that committee as a public, public.
Yeah.
But they are very interested because they feel that there are people out there who would like to donate for various things, who may not know what's needed. You were talking about the playground before. There may be, folks, and we've seen that happen, I think, in Boylston too, at the school, just how many parents have reached out to beautify the grounds, right, in Boylston. So I think folks are willing to do things for us and contribute. They just don't know what to do. and they want it to be reasonable and something that they're interested in. So, I mean, that's food for thought as well. I mean, I'd like to kind of take on the spirit of what the Fuller Foundation is about. And see, and they're certainly willing to help us with that. They have connections and contacts about how to go about doing that. So you do it well in Boylston, or I mean, you have a BEF, right? The
Well, I was,
Boylston
yeah, because we had the meeting that that you'd have to do any fundraising through 503. So I'm imagining it would have to be through the PTO or the BEF. Like a subcommittee of them, or I've not attended their meetings, so I'm
right. And I think BEF is also contained within the parents in the school. I think the Fullers were challenging us to look broader for opportunities in both communities. So I don't know how to spearhead.
In terms of grants or private donors, businesses, that type.
Yes,
all of
both.
the above.
Yep,
Okay.
grant, all of that, right, and private donors and so on.
Okay. Okay. I grew up with the Fullers in the Boylston church. I no longer go there, but I was singing with them growing up, so I would be happy to meet with them at future meetings. But yeah, maybe I'll reach out to Megan because she's, I think, the president of BEF. So maybe I can go to their next meeting.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I know. I talked with PTO. I didn't go to their meeting, but I talked with them beforehand, and they wouldn't really be able to do any type of fundraising till the spring. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Right. I don't want to keep everyone forever. Does anyone else have anything or? No. Okay. Maybe then Lisa and I can chat about maybe a mission statement for our committee. I don't know if the other subcommittees have such a thing. I don't know. So I'll reach out to someone. Maybe I'll reach out to Mike and see if they have mission statements there so we can clarify our purpose. So
Great. That's a great story. Thank you.
It sounds good to me.
all right. Cool. Well, thank you so much, guys. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.
And-
You're welcome. Thank you both. Thanks, Carol. Thanks,
you
Nicole.
very much.
Thank you all.
2:15. I'll
It's
say
tomorrow
we'll call
night.
the meeting.
Okay.
See you tomorrow evening. Bye.
Take care. Yep. See